Hi there, everybody. This is Wendy Hernandez, and welcome back for another episode of the Family Law Insider podcast. I'm thrilled to have our guest with us today. His name is Jay Forte. Is that right, Jay?
Actually, we say 40, but either one works.
I'm sorry. You know,
No, that's no problem.
I didn't clarify that with you before we got on the air. Jay Forte, and he is the founder and the CEO of the Greatness Zone. He's an author, he's a motivational speaker, and he's a coach. He has an important experience to share with people out there, and I know there's a lot of people out there who need to hear this. Today I'm going to talk with Jay about divorce when one parent comes out. So, with that, we'll just launch into it, Jay, and welcome and thank you for joining me today.
Wendy, it's my pleasure to be here, and it's something that my family struggled through until we found a way of being okay with it, and now it's something that not only guides my work, but it's not advice as much as coaching that I love to offer people who may be struggling with a situation similar to it.
Okay, Jay, so would you mind sharing a little bit about how long you were married and how long ago this happened, the coming out, and how many kids you have? Like, what went down, basically?
Okay. I'm one of those, so a couple of things. I grew up in a big Italian family. There are 6 kids in the family. I'm third. And it's a very strong Catholic family that had a rule on how life was to be. Gay was not in it. And I knew when I was 5 or 6 that I was very different than my brothers. But I also knew what the rules of the family were. And so in my mind, this was not even a possibility. I was not going to be this. Though I didn't know what it was early on, I knew, I think I was about 10, I was listening to some Christian radio show, and they mentioned the word gay, and I'm thinking, oh my God, that's me. What am I supposed to, I can't. My whole life is going to be this. Yeah. And then I was determined that nobody would ever know. And so, the rules of the family were fine. That meant that I could fit in fine into a world that, I'm 57 this year, so, I mean, this is, though today is much more accommodating of this, back when I was growing up, it really wasn't. It wasn't at all. So the mindset about this was, no, this is not for me, I don't want it, I'm not going to do this. And, but the funny thing about this, and this would be the thing that I would talk to either party in a relationship who's struggling with this, is that when something's left unattended, it will surface and show up and need to be attended. And so I followed the rules of the family. I went to college. That was the formula. The formula. A lot of kids, you have the formula, so everybody's safe. Here we go. So the formula is study hard, get a good job, get married, have kids, you'll be happy. Okay, study hard, next kids. Get a job, get married, have kids, you'll be happy. And then that's great, but what if you're the gay kid? Well, yeah. So that doesn't really work for you. But at the same time, how do you not break your parents' heart, and how do you try and fit into a world that says, what you really are is not where you should be? So I did get married. I met someone in college. We were absolutely wonderful friends. Everybody was getting married. We got married. She's a remarkable, terrific person. We were married just under 10 years, and we were unusual. We were not people that battled very much at all, really. We're very calm people, So we were getting into a period where we had 3 kids. The kids back then, they were 8, 7, and 3. And we were just on each other's nerves, and the only reason we were, it was me. I had everything that everybody said you should have. I have the big house, the big job. We had money. We had, a lovely family. We had big family. She's from a big family. I was from a big family. Life on some road could not have been better. It was exactly what everybody said you should have, but it was the thing that brought me to a point of saying, I can't do this anymore. This is such a farce. I'm watching this like a spectator on the outside. And the only reason why I say that is that I think that for those who receive someone sharing that news with them, understand that the complexity of trying to figure this out in a world that doesn't really let you means there isn't a guilty party here. Because to everybody, because when I finally came out, sorry, let me finish the story.
That's okay.
I shared with my wife one night that the reason why we were at each other more, because she took everything personally, and I just needed her to know that the challenge wasn't her, it was me. And so that was the reason why I said, there's something that I had hoped to hide my whole life. I don't know what to do with it. It's totally messing me up. Here's what the problem is. And so I told her, and she went ashen. She's like, now what do we do? And the only answer we had was, I don't know. I'm not saying I want to be out. I don't know. It's just in my face, and I got to get it out of my face.
Yeah.
How do I do that? And so we looked for a little spiritual guidance right away. We didn't succeed in that because we were going to a Lutheran church at the time. Lutheran church was much more convinced that I just renounce it rather than deal with it. And dealing with it wasn't go out and, find someone to love and be gay. It was, I now have a family and I have this issue and I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
So we eventually did do some counseling, and it took us about a year and a half of counseling, and we eventually decided we could not stay together because it was too hard for her to think that I didn't truly want to be there. And it was also too hard for her from a faith standpoint. In her mind, being gay was a right-wrong issue.
Oh.
It wasn't a humanity issue. It was a liturgical issue. It was a church issue. Okay. So it put her in a really difficult bind that she could possibly love somebody that much but also have this challenge to her faith, and it really was unfair on her part as well. The reason why I share all that is that we were not like most people who get upset with each other at a divorce. We didn't know how to go through this because we really cared about each other and didn't know how not to hurt the other one, but at the same time we didn't have information about how we each could be okay in this.
Yeah.
So a couple of really important lessons. So let me stop there for a second. So that brought me to the point of acknowledging that's what it was. Two very large families instantly found out that the Cornerstone family, in two big ethnic families, hers was from Finland, mine was from Italy, that stability is now just not going to be there.
Yeah. Wow. And can I ask a question real quick, Jay? What did the kids know as you were going through the counseling and spiritual, looking to your spiritual, leaders for help? Did they know that any of this was happening?
They knew that we were struggling a little bit, but I never shared that information. My ex-wife said when the moment was right, it was my responsibility to tell the kids about the reason for the departure. And the truly most difficult day I think I've ever had is the day that I had to tell the kids that I was moving out. And so there's a lot of feeling that is worth commenting about on, the gay party in the relationship isn't trying to break up a relationship. It is just trying to deal with a perspective that, we as a society haven't been good at, so we hide. Just as there are other issues that spouses hide from each other that blossom into a problem that ends up in the same situation I did. A divorce happens because somebody is hiding about something.
Yeah.
With the ability to be true to yourself and be supported, there's a lot of good things. Now, I never regret for a second not having the kids. I have 3 daughters. I love having 3 daughters. 2 are married. The coolest thing in the world is walking your daughter down the aisle. So, it is just remarkable to have that. The challenge that it created for my ex-wife and for the kids was nothing I would have wished on them. But we also worked harder than most families, I think, to make sure that they were okay because we didn't want them to feel weird and grow up, the victim of a battling ex-wife and a battling ex-husband.
Yes. Yes, that makes sense, and that's something that I wish more people that I see in my office would do, and I think it is difficult because there is a lot of blame going on and underlying feelings of anger, and despite the fact that you guys were it sounds like working together. Was that happening? Was there the blame and the anger?
So here's a really funny situation. Who do you blame on this one? Does she can get mad at me for not telling her? But my statement was I wasn't going to tell anybody. My entire life, no one would know this. And for it to be so large that even I couldn't deal with it was a call for help more than anything. So I think when she understood that, and I remember a couple of years after we were divorced, she said to me once, and this was the thing that helped me come to finally some peace about this whole thing. She said, I know how much you had to give up in order to do this. So then I know how much this was an issue for you. No one meant anybody to be upset or hurt, and in many cases, that's what it is. So if I have to give some guidance in this whole thing,
Yeah.
if this is who you are and this is what's going on, there are ways to do it well. There and the biggest thing that I can comment on who I was and who my ex-wife was in this process is we were so committed to ensuring that our family was safe, no matter what, and that we stepped boldly into being whoever we needed to be for them. I was there to make sure that she had what she needed and the kids had what they needed. It was not about, we were not going to argue about money ever, who needs what to be okay, who needs help being all right with this, where do I have to spend more time with. We just went at it as sane, loving parents who didn't want their kids to look like they belong in a reality show because we couldn't get our lives together. And though we had this big change, I love who my kids have become. They have seen that people, even in conflict, can work things out when they care. And even in a divorce, you still care. I mean, there are elements of care. There's some commonality in it. And that is what I find was the reason, partly to say that, you know, if you're gay and you're thinking about coming out to your family, find some resources to help land on your feet, to be sure about what it is that you want in your life, and then bring them in a caring and loving way, because this will change a lot of people.
So when you say resources, can you give me a better idea or give the listeners a better idea of what type of resources you're talking about exactly, Jay?
Yeah, and so one of the things I was determined on growing up as a Catholic kid that, you know, I wasn't about to pave my road to hell by being gay, because a lot of people said that. That's what it is. So I went to every clergy I could find and asked this one question: is it right or wrong to be gay? And every one of them gave me the answer I didn't want, which was the right answer, which was, what do you think it is for you? So my guidance to people is that you find counselors who are skilled in helping people identify what's true for them, and who are sensitive to the issue of gay identity, work anyway, but moreover gay within a marriage.
Yeah.
Because there will be complexities on how people feel and how you have to handle kids and things like that, that a skilled guidance counselor who knows how to do the LGBT community can provide that. So to go into the rainbow pages, they call it, and look up LGBT counselors that have specialty in family, and there are more and more now. There are some wonderful resources that you can at least feel right about this in the first place and get some options on how you might bring it to your family so they can be okay too.
Okay. So, and would you recommend for somebody who is going through this or thinking about, you know, going through this, in telling their partner that, you know, I'm gay and I want out of the marriage, or I'm not happy, I'm not living authentically, whatever, you know, whatever it is along these lines that we're talking about, would you recommend, if they have children, that those children be involved in counseling as part of the unfolding of the relationship, or does it just depend, in your opinion?
I don't know if the reason why it worked in our case was that I owned that. I think my ex-wife didn't want any part of it, and I think that was the one part that I think she bailed on. But I think it was right for the wrong reason. I think the party needs to be able to explain without the commentary of somebody else what this is. And it's really hard unless the two of you are of similar mind about it. And we were in very different mind about it. Mine was, I have a right to be who I am, and hers was, well, I'm sorry, but you just can't be this. So that was not a formula for helping the kids. They didn't need that. So we had I told my older two, it just was, you know, sometimes you just have to be vigilant and find an opportunity when the opportunity was right. We're coming back from a big family party. It was the older two kids and me. And we were talking about a cousin of mine who was gay, who was at the party. And I remember saying to the kids, you know, this was before I had told them we were now separated, but they didn't know why. And I said, there's somebody else in the family who's gay. And the kids are like, really? Who? And I said, me. And so my two daughters are in the back. The older one is sitting behind me, and then she reaches around the chair and gives me a hug.
Really?
Yeah, it was really cool. The middle one, my middle daughter, so I reached back just to touch her hand. She wouldn't have any part of it, and it took her 2 or 3 months to be okay hearing it, and I still don't even know why, what the reaction was to. Was she sorry for her mother? Did she not know what it was? Or what it was? But the kids, I think, and kids nowadays are much more comfortable with this. My younger daughter is a couple of years younger than them, and she was probably 8 at the time. She calls me one day at work when I finally told her, and I tell her, and she's like, okay, whatever. And then the next day she calls me at work and she says, hey, Dad, I don't think I want a gay dad.
Oh.
Kate, I didn't want to be gay either, but sometimes life brings you things and says, for whatever reason, this one's yours. And you know what? So what can we do so that it is a good thing? So we talked for a little while, and she said, hey, I guess it's no big deal after all. I'll see you on Saturday. And so some kids can be really resilient, but they were because the other side of the relationship, my ex-wife, didn't create roadblocks for the opportunity to talk about what it was. And I get that, and this is why she's remarkable, there are some people who can look past the event and care more about the people affected by it and can show up big to their own life by not being petty and nasty and small. That there's time for you to grieve and feel bad, and there are people who can help you with that, but it's not your kids. Don't dump that stuff on your kids. And I think the reason why they're sane about it and respectful of who I am and how my life has moved and their mother is because no point in there did we make our battles their battles.
That's great. That's awesome. So in thinking about what you're saying, one of the things that pops into my mind is, were you afraid at all about some sort of backlash for your kids in terms of their school friends? Would they be ostracized? Would they, be made fun of? Would they be bullied? Did this happen?
It didn't happen that I'm aware of. We also did a very good job of showing up to all our kids' events kind of together. So I didn't date anybody for a while afterwards. So there wasn't somebody who shows up right away, and then there's mom and 2 dads that the kids would have to explain. So I think we did a pretty good job of giving the world a little time to process. But yes, I was hyper aware of what did they know and who would I let them meet, in my world. And part of that was also at a period when the gay world said nobody wants you gay because you're a dad, and the dad world says you don't really fit because you're gay. And now look at the world that we have. Gay dads are like normal.
Yeah.
So everything migrates. So I would just say get a sense on how your kids perceive the issue.
Yeah.
And then determine how you bring them into your life little by little. That it's right, to give them some time to process.
What are your thoughts on whether somebody is gay or not, in terms of when the right time might be to introduce a new person into the children's lives, after divorces happen? Because this comes up a lot.
Yeah.
You kind of alluded to that earlier, that you waited a little bit. I'm curious what you think about it.
Well, I'm also a coach. So one of the things I guess I would do is I would ask some questions. And one of my big suggestions in dealing with kids is involving them more in the questioning part. Where are they? What kinds of things do they see on TV? What kinds of things are their friends involved in? What's their perspective about that? How would they feel if somebody else started to join us for things? What would they think about it? What would they feel about it? And I know some people are like, our kids were too coddled. We give them all this opportunity to speak their mind. But about this kind of thing, I think we need to get a barometer about where they might be feeling or what they might be feeling. And the only way we can do that is to ask some questions. And I think to sit down with them, clear all the technology out of the way, and just spend some true one-on-one time with them to get a feel for where they are before you say, hey, there's somebody I want to introduce you, okay with that, is really different than, so what if you bring a friend next week when you come over and what if you bring a couple of friends? How does that feel? Would you have a problem if I bring a friend? Not next time, but maybe some point down the future. Yeah. And I think, I'm trying to think of what a child psychologist would say about it, but my sense is to give them a voice in the process just means I'm eliciting some feedback. I don't know that I'll always agree with your perspective, but if that's where you are, I need to meet you where you are and help you be okay. And I
Right.
think the biggest thing that I learned about this was that though this was my issue, I had a lot of people affected by it. And that meant I had to always watch how the rest of the world was doing as I was trying to watch me and how I was doing. And it was utterly fatiguing. I bet there were 10 years that were utterly fatiguing before the smoke just kind of lifted.
Yeah.
And part of that might have been the age of the kids, and part of that might have been that the world was shifting a little bit more and accepting. But to be in that original place was, the ton of bricks around you. But I couldn't do the work that I do now had I not been through that epic event that said, stop pretending. Life is not for you to pretend. If you're miserable, say something, do something, change it, ask about it, talk to somebody, because at the end, all that you do is just hate it. And there was a day that I found myself close to jumping off a bridge with this.
Wow.
So it was too much. How could I disappoint so many people and ruin so many lives? But it wasn't. It was going back and saying, how do I show up big to what it is that I have? So that would be the biggest thing you asked me at the end, when we were talking before, what kind of guidance do I give? It's that question. You have to ask yourself that question about your relationship any day, but particularly with this kind of relationship. How am I supposed to show up big to this and help everybody else who's here? How am I a leader in my own life, whatever the circumstance? And I think the moment we do that, we set ourselves up for the ability to talk about things that we wouldn't normally talk about. But I think we realize we're not the only person in the picture. And to me, I found that to be life-changing. That was life-changing for me.
And that's amazing. I mean, that is just beautiful. It's and so tell me, what has happened with your life since you showed up big to what you have? What has transpired since then? How are things different now?
Well, I finally realized that I was never supposed to be an accountant, and moreover, a gay accountant. So the gay thing came, we finally dealt with that. So the fear of watching over your shoulder every moment that someone might find you out went, and all that energy was focused on that, turned into energy, this great creative energy that I have. And so I shifted out of that, turned into an educator, and now I'm an author. I have a couple of books out helping people discover who they really are and how to connect that real sense of self to the world and stop playing small. I spent my whole life afraid, and now I realize that though I don't get those years back, what I do have is a keen sense that you should show up big to the life that you've got, that there's no mistake about it. They didn't mess up. This is the one you're supposed to have. And in it, if you look for it, you'll find some huge value. And I cursed the gay thing my whole life. Why was it me? Until I realized what it was trying to get me to do was be courageous enough to show up big to my own life. And if I could do that, then everything else that is now beginning to happen could happen. I gave myself no possibilities in the life I was living. And though it was hard, life on the other side of a big decision like that is limitless. And as it's not perfect, but it is really remarkable to be on the other side of owning a really tough and big decision.
Oh, I love it. Thank you, Jay. And time is about up. I mean, I think that's just the perfect note to end on. But, after having heard what you just told us all, and I'm sure there's going to be people who want to find you and who need you and need your guidance and experience, so how can they do that?
Oh, I would love to. I mean, this is obviously a very close spot in my heart in this process. And that was part of the reason why I went and became a coach. I knew that in order to talk to people about this, I would have to get out of telling them how to do things and ask them good questions. And that's what a coach does best. So my work can be found on the website, thegreatnesszone.com. We have a Facebook page of the same name. You can find me on Twitter, J40. You can reach me at any point in those. If you have any question about this or about the work about how do you find your fit and all that stuff, it's on thegreatnesszone.com.
And are the links to your books on the Greatness Zone as well?
They are. The workshops that we teach and the coaching that we do, we have an unusual style of coaching, are all that came out of this big event. How do you show up big when the world says don't? You say do. Here's how we do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your time with me. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I can't wait to see where you go in your life. I hear some weird buzzing. I don't know if that's my phone or your phone, but anyways, thank you, Jay. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Family Law Insider Podcast. Thanks for joining us, and remember, we're on your side when it matters most. I'll see you next time.